Scottish Summit 2021, finally here. Hi, I'm Josh Anglesea. This is Business Central Powered Up. Before we get into the session itself, I want to go ahead and say a big thank you to the sponsors, because without them, these events don't happen. So, strong thank you to Script Runner, DQ Go, Proximo 3, Red Spire, Agilus, and Hitachi Solutions. As I said at the top of the order there, I'm Josh Anglesea. I work for Expedition in the UK. I'm a Business Central consultant mostly. You can follow me there on Twitter. That's my Twitter handle. And I also have a blog site as well if you want to see more content like you're going to see today. What is my session about? What is Business Central Powered Up? Well, for me personally, working with Business Central on a regular basis, having to go through various scenarios of customers over the years, I start looking more towards Power Platform, and I think, well, if there's a lot of stuff we can do with that, which will alleviate a lot of time and effort on our behalf for implementation. So it's a great place to get things done quickly but effectively. And if you can remove development effort with the code and language we now have to use with Business Central AL, that's a great place to be. And overall, it just seems like it's a far easier platform for utilizing more of what we have with Microsoft anyway. So the kind of session that we're going to do today is going to be based around some demo scenarios that I've got, and I'll try to give a little bit of a high level solution design on things. Probably can't do a deep dive because of how much time we have available to us. I want to encourage you to use the hashtag Scottish Summit 2021 as much as you can over the course of the weekend. Really get the buzz going on social media if we can. So here is our agenda. So kind of just the 4 things to go through. Try to give as much detail as we can in those moments that we have, but try to tailor it towards actual things that you could end up using off the back of this session. That's the idea, at least. So our first one there is to go ahead and work with the Canvas app and to do some data validation. So the kind of concept with this one, I suppose, is that we're dealing with master data input, especially. Quite often get frustration from users that people are maybe inputting data that they shouldn't be, and there isn't enough field level validation from Business Central to cater for things. UK especially, it's very popular to utilize postcode validations, and there's an API directly in Business Central for doing that. But then when it comes to other pieces of data, maybe people can be a little bit sloppy, or they have a certain way that they like to key it in. And as administrators or people looking after the overall solution, you want it to be in a certain standard so that you can utilize it in other places when needed. So let's go ahead and jump straight into our kind of main example with this one. So it is a Canvas app that we're going to be utilizing to showcase this. What I'm going to go ahead and do is start keying in some detail about a new customer record. Basically, this is a request form. You want to think about it like that. Just some different input fields that we can go ahead and use. Just some labels to show what we're looking for. And we'll just key in some dummy data for the time being. So the idea with this is you're giving users a different starting point. You would think about stripping down permissions within Business Central itself, then this could be a good avenue, because then you're giving them a completely different application to go ahead and key data in. And because this is an application that we've gone ahead and generated, and we've laid in all the different bells and whistles that we want within it, so we want way more control. Now let's get down to these postcodes. Let's key something in that makes some sense. That should be okay. All right. Then we've got some, so this data is coming directly from Business Central. It's just the country code table. So let's pick one that makes sense for you. Here he is. Okay, and then we get to the part where I'm really going to showcase something. So phone number and email addresses can be one of those bits of information that could be keyed in incorrectly. And the validation within Business Central isn't too great with that, especially when it comes to phone number at least. It's pretty much just a text field. So any kind of characters you want to not have in there, or you want to have a prefix or something of that nature, it's not really catered for. So if we were to put in a number like that, for instance, and then tab out of the field, getting a red X just at this stage. The other thing you'll notice with the rest of the page is, okay, I might have some icons over here, and we can talk about what they do in a second, but they're not really getting anything to actually let me progress any further. And that's another aspect of this sort of validation, where until you've done all the bits that I need you to, and you've got a couple of indicators to suggest that you've done that, I'm not going to let you go any further. So we kind of come back over to our phone number field over here, and we were to drop the 0, let's say, and then put plus 44 for the country code. Then okay, then while we're getting somewhere, okay, good. So we get a green tick to say that that's valid information. We're quite happy with that. So for email, if we were to go in for a fictional email for now. That was also a valid one, so it lets me progress a little bit further, gives me the extra green tick, and then you can also see that these buttons are now showing at the bottom. So we've jumped through all the different hoops, and it's letting us now see something. Now, if we were to maybe drop the @ sign, you can see that's not what we wanted, so we're stopping you from progressing again. But these things are really easy to go ahead and put into play. It didn't take a whole lot of effort, really. So if we just take a brief look at what's going on with these guys, and appreciate you might not be fully used to everything. I'm assuming a certain level of knowledge when it comes to Power Platform, at least. So if I look at the onChange property of that particular text input, this is where I'm saying that I have an if statement to say if it doesn't include that within the text that's typed, and I'm either going to say that the email address is valid to a number 1 or a valid to a number 2, and this is pretty much just a number way of being able to control when this particular property over here ends up being visible. So there's a visible property just here, and if that one is set to 1, then you end up seeing this green one. But there will, in fact, also be an invalid email icon, which is just named fairly nicely over there for us. And then if we look at the visibility for that has to be for number 2. Real basic stuff, but pretty much just utilizing the fact that we can go ahead and interrogate the text that's typed there. And we're going to expand that out further, right? So if statement is just doing one logical test, but you could put in and or and then do further logical tests, just like you would do if you were doing formula in Excel. That's definitely where the skill set is aimed to be. kind of after you've laid in all the other bits and pieces you're happy with regards to this one, if we were to go ahead and now use the submit button, get a little bit of a loading up the top there. The idea here is we just highlight our on select button, is that we're going to go ahead and do a patch to directly to the Business Central connector actually, which is means that we're going to get that data straight in there from the app itself. So again, kind of goes back to the idea of if that button is visible, then you can progress. You have jumped through the different hoops that we were expecting. That is good data. And with that particular patch command, what ends up being utilized is this API setup area. And you can set these up yourself, and these are just the ones that kind of come out the box, but this is the idea of using the templating. When I first started talking about data validation, I think, yeah, but you can use the templates, they're in there, they're standard anyway. It only goes so far based on what we've just seen there. If people are actually keying in bad values, we need something else. So that's a good capability that could be used. We jump to the customer list itself over here. Just give that an F5 to refresh, and we can now see that we've got our new customer just added in there. So that's pretty much that one in a nutshell. So we just jump back over to our slides. We'll take a look at our next topic. Okay, so this one is to do with exporting bank files. And I want to kind of leverage Power Automate to do the heavy lifting, as it were. But a little bit of maybe background on this one, because it's maybe not super clear as to why you would bother doing this. Because a lot of implementations these days will go ahead and use the AMC banking app, especially for GB and probably US implementations as well. But maybe not all countries have that application available to them. We've also seen on kind of numerous projects that customers don't necessarily want to have an additional third-party application. And the AMC banking app's been there quite a while, so something that people should be getting more and more used to. The thing is that app might also may not have all of the necessary bank formats as well. So there's a few limitations there. The images that you're seeing on the slide there are kind of to do with the legacy model that we had. So that's actually this one here is a screen grab of NAV. And you can see there that we used to be able to go ahead and take a BACS file to a dedicated file location, which is fine. And then that file location you could go ahead and have some level of control against. So that one's there going to the Z files. It more than likely a shared network folder or something of that nature, which would have lockdown permissions to stop us from having the wrong people getting hold of the file. So that was fine. But what we end up seeing probably more and more these days, if people don't use the AMC banking app, and you get something more like this in the web client, where you might have a custom export routine that you'll go ahead and conduct that activity. But it takes you straight into the user's browser session, which is a little bit of a limitation because then they've got direct handling against it. There's no proof to everybody else that files dropped in to somewhere else. At least with the older model, you might have been able to have some sort of tracking mechanism on, okay, files now entered that file path, notify some additional users, something of that nature. So where does Power Automate come into this, and how can we maybe look to stand against this situation and improve it a little bit and give ourselves an extra option? Well, let's go into Power Automate and we'll take a look at that one. So it's just this one over here. This is a kind of great trigger to be able to use. The idea with this one is that you're creating a URL essentially that sits in the cloud, and you'll then be able to post some information to it. So the URL itself will get automatically generated when you go ahead and choose this connector. We just have a look at our connector options here. You choose HTTP. Then they kind of sit in this selection here as a trigger one. So you've got this when a HTTP request is received. Which should sit in this sort of premium model, but depending on your license for Office, you'll more than likely have that one anyway. So great little tool for us to use. So we basically now have somewhere in the cloud for us to pass some data to. The only other hoop we have to jump through there is we have to build up a JSON schema. Well, it's not something that you're used to. Don't worry about it too much. There's plenty of good guides on working with JSON. W3 Schools is a very good starting point if you wanted to take a look there. But by and large, what we're looking for within this schema for the JSON that we're working with here is just a file name, which is going to be of a string type, and then also a document. So that's where it gives maybe a little bit on the more technical side, but that's okay. We're still looking to pass a string, but we're actually going to be sending it probably a base 64 value. I'm not going to jump into the code for this one. There is a kind of customization we have to do within Business Central to get this one cooking. But pretty much all it is we build up this required JSON and then send it to the URL that's mentioned there. Once that information is passed over to it, we've got it and we're happy. And pretty much all we've got to do is what we'd like to, which is move that file into another place. So I've just gone for OneDrive for now. We've still got some level of capability for locking down areas and that sort of thing. But you could pass this out into plenty of other connectors. Azure Blob Storage, for instance, would be fine as well. And simply all we're having to do is go ahead and log the file name that we passed it. And the other thing that the connector wants is the actual content itself. Now, I was sort of mentioning when we were assessing the schema over there that we were going to pass over base 64 in a string, just because it's a little bit more condensed than the binary option that's there, a little bit more transportable. And all we have to do is use this expression, inbuilt nice expression within Power Automate to just convert what we're sending as base 64 over into the binary option, because that's what OneDrive or what under the hood, of course, is SharePoint prefers to go and use. So simply having to just pick the other part of the schema that we're sending it and then loading it in. So let's go ahead and see it in action, I suppose. Like I said, no deep dive in and how the coding or whatever has been done. We're in Business Central here, and we've got ourselves just a payment journal, just the 3 lines in it, nothing overly complex. So I'll go ahead and hit this export backs page action, which has been, as mentioned, developed to be in the solution now. We hit him, and then we'll eventually pass back a message to say it's been saved to the online storage. Okay, cool. If we jump back over to kind of the run history of Power Automate, can we see some of that? And we've got one that's just hit So kind of revealing maybe a little bit about what the content is like. So pretty much just generating a file name over in the Business Central code that controls this. And then this is the base64 string value that we're getting. So that's actually all of the text that we want to go ahead and see. If we just use the app launcher here and get ourselves into OneDrive just ever so quickly. It's probably the one tab I didn't have open for the session. And we'll just have a quick gander at our file that's been generated. It's just a demo file. It's nothing kind of formalized with the bank or whatever, but kind of as close as you maybe get for now. So you can see the one that's just been created about a minute ago. Size is probably about right for sort of 3 lines or however many we ended up sending it. So if we just give that a quick preview. If it wants to play games. Oh, there we go. And there we go. We can see a text file has been generated. Yeah, and that's pretty much all we've had to go with that one. So quite a nice little technique to pass out data in different sort of method than we've been used to, which is cool. So this could be used in other ways, I suppose. Base64 could be handling documents and such like, although it might also be easier just to pass straight into something like SharePoint or what have we. It's just another one to have in the kit bag, really. Another good option. Okay, so we get back to our slides. Okay, up next is using Power BI Canvas app, but to improve the image storing options that are offered. So kind of, well, let's jump into the example and you'll see where I'm trying to get to with this one. It's a little bit of a hack, I suppose, in the sense that I've seen a few people. One of them is my colleague, actually, Dan Kinsella. He's done a control add-in within Business Central to hold a Canvas app, which is quite cool. I've seen a couple of other people do it as well. What's a little bit better about doing it in that way is that they've been able to kind of get the sizing a little bit better. As you can see here, this is a Power BI report, yes, but it's just got an embedded Canvas app inside it, so it makes it a little bit squished, a little bit, not so nice to look at. But the thing I like about maybe trying this kind of little cheap trick is that whenever I sort of move around and choose a different record, it's contextualized with the Power BI report, because there's a really easy way to get that going. So with your actual reports themselves, it works as well, which is cool. So as we just move through, we can get that kind of option. So what I've ended up doing with our little app here is it's kept it really, really minimalistic. I think that's the absolute key with this, because the view on it's just so lousy otherwise. If you have a look at one that I tried to do with customers over here, I've got a few extra buttons on it. It's just it just doesn't play out as nicely if I try and go over into one of the sort of areas that's within it. So these are some SharePoint documents that this customer has, and then maybe I want to have a look at the PDF. It's too small, it's too grainy. So I think there's definitely limitations to utilising this if you do think it's a favourable thing to do. So for now, I've kept it pretty basic. A couple of buttons. Could extend that out a little bit further if you wanted to. what's the idea here? How am I extending the image possibilities? Well, if we think about the fact that standard Business Central can hold any given time one image record in these display windows, yeah, there's plenty of third-party applications and modifications that could be done to make it hold more item images. That's fine. I kind of accept that, but that's not what we're about with Business Central Powered Up. We want to try and use what's there already and keep it low code if we can. So with this one, if we go ahead and choose the plus icon for the item that we've got selected, and we get taken to an image selection window, essentially. So I know, again, it's small, but minimal detail to try and make it as user-friendly as you can get it. So if we go ahead and choose an image to work with, because we're working with the Athens desk over here, I'm going to choose the brown version of that. Okay, we have the chance to key in some extra descriptive detail if we wanted to, so let's go with brown version. Okay, and we'll choose to upload. So where are we uploading to? What's going on there? Well, the concept I wanted to go with was that I'm not always going to be able to store everything inside of Business Central, so I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to palm that out to SharePoint, and then I'll be able to have a repository of different images in there as well. And then the user themselves would be able to kind of go over into SharePoint from Business Central directly, and they could work with those images or view what's already on offer. I had the idea as well to maybe make it editable option, so you could go and select other images that are in SharePoint and then patch this record here and make it so that was the main image, which could be good as well. I've done that kind of thing. There's a video on my site if you wanted to check that out. I did it for BC Tech Talk. What I've gone for instead, to keep it neat and tidy for the time being, is with this one, it'll take us straight over into the SharePoint site where we have an image library and all of our different images sitting inside of there. These are the ones that have been sent up thus far. Now, a different way of working, but real basic and quick thing to get going actually. So if you were to have a look at Power BI itself, yeah, we can log in. Maybe later. The only kind of prerequisite with using this is the data item that you have. You need to use the primary key, and there's a filter on all the pages. If you do that, then that's how you'll be able to get the sort of movement of it being contextualized. So it knows that's just pass that data straight into the report, because that's what it is. It's a Power BI report, but just happens to have a Canvas app inside of it. So again, a little bit of a cheap trick, but could be pretty effective. Once that's been done, the only other thing that's worth mentioning as a minor detail is the page size. So yes, it does render it down quite small, as you can see. That's more to do with the fact that it's basing it all on pixels. This is the recommended sizing. Clearly, using Power BI and then a Canvas app inside of that means that it scales it down a little bit further because of the Canvas app. I mean, keep it minimal with buttons, a little bit of data on there just to see what record you're working with. I think that could be quite good. Maybe for some other scenarios, interested to see what people could come up with on that one. All right. We jump back over to our world of slides. And we'll kind of get to our main thing to look at over here. So, me missing a slide. Okay, the main thing to kind of do a little bit more detail on, if we can, because it is a slightly more detailed solution. Line level document approvals. What am I getting at with this one? Well, it's a requirement that I've heard a lot about over the years, and it's constantly requested. I've heard of a few kind of little cheap tricks, hacks to get it going with the regular Business Central or NAV workflow engine. It never really quite worked out the way I kind of envisaged them to anyway. So the scenario we're going to end up seeing with this one is a sales quote. Lame document to pick, I know, but for them it was just easier to isolate it to one that wasn't going to use that much. What we've got is going to be three different department dimensions against each line. Kind of as the graphic shows there, if a line relates to a certain department, then that's who you want it to end up going to. I mean, it's a basic story, of course, but because it's always been a bit of a challenge to do this as standard, it was something that was really keen to get going with Power Automate. What's worth highlighting with regards to approvals in general with Power Automate is that you're kind of just palming a set of data that you choose off into a black box, really. That's how Business Central could look at it. And it just waits until a response comes back to it so it can go ahead and finish what it was doing. But that works out great for handling scenarios like this because you're not governed by the design concepts that you've had to go with for the legacy Business Central workflows. It's a nice step to one side, and then you can kind of go a little bit clean slate with it. I want to highlight something a little bit strange with this one as well. So I've kind of seen it a couple of times when I've been working with it. I'm just going to go back a little bit into the history of this particular flow. You may end up seeing it yourselves, or if you're brand new to Business Central, you've never used those workflows before, and you may end up seeing this kind of error message. Okay, I'll just describe what it is actually, instead of trying to find it. What it is if you've never used Business Central before for approvals at all, you'll more than likely set up your Power Automate document workflow approval. Should be great. And then you'll go ahead and test it, and then it'll fail, and you'll get an error message basically saying that you don't have permission to do what you're trying to do, which is super weird because you'll be thinking, well, I've set this up as an administrator, I've got the correct rights to do this, but the error message will just continuously come up. It's going to log into a different company because that's where the information is. But that approval user setup window, which doesn't actually get used at all when you're using Power Automate document approvals, because like I said, you're passing that information out somewhere and then it's doing its own business logic. But for some reason, when using this format, you bring the data back in. If you don't have it could just be one user as well, by the way, just one user inside of the legacy approval user setup window, marked either as an approver, or nicely the screen's loaded up, or as a substitute, as you've got here, then it errors. It's really, really weird. But if you've got it kind of laid out as I've got here, so I'm using my Business Central connector in Power Automate as this user, this admin user. And then later on in the setup window here, admin is mentioned as approver ID and he's mentioned as substitute ID. These are the two filters that it uses. If it finds a blank for either one of them, it errors. If it's like this, not going to be a problem. So just a weird thing that you might see, worth keeping an eye out for if it ends up happening to you. All right, so let's jump over to my sales quote and we'll get this one on the go. The reason why this is going to come at the end of the presentation is going to take a little bit more time is that we're doing approvals, so I will have to log in as other users and you'll have to kind of see that. I'll try and do it as quick as I can. I've got everybody logged in already, but kind of want you to see that we're doing something a little bit different in terms of how we're cutting up the approval to what you maybe seen previously. So you want to see those approvals flying through. Okay, great. So it's this big one at the top here, large amount, that we want to go ahead and work with. So this one's a lot slower just because it's a complete demonstration tenant, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer to load screens up. But to narrate ever so slightly while we do wait for loading, we're going to have 3 lines. Each line is going to be for a different department. So just the one dimension code being used there. I'm just going to go ahead and also cancel this one so we can get it going again. Okay, set to open again. Perfect. One thing to also highlight whilst we're over on our quote that's a little bit different again to Power Automate usage of document approvals is the kind of audit trail you have with approvals is a little bit on the different side as well, okay? I'm going to do a supplementary blog article about this because I think it needs juicing up a little bit, so just bear it in mind when I do share the screen. So if we have a look at the approval screen, we've got Power Automate document approval enabled for this particular company. So we get given flow entries here instead of approvals, which you'll sort of nicely be able to see who initiated the approval and then who ended up approving it or who was marked to be as the approver. We don't get that over here. We can see that my user that I'm logged in at the moment, this admin user, and then someone else has also ended up working on this document. But the weird thing is when it comes back in, let me look at the continue one. This is one where it's actually been approved. It kind of looks like it's a self-approval. It isn't. You'll see when we actually get it going. But that's more down to the fact that fine, this user, because it's in Business Central, is known as being the person that started it off, did the initiation. But the person who brought it back in, as you'll see when you look in Power Automate, is actually this admin user. The reason why it's that admin user is because that is the person who has the connection to Business Central in Power Automate. That's the only difference. So I'm thinking, yeah, supplementary posts, maybe start stitching some stuff into comments, possibly even line level as well. So yeah, watch this space for something on that one. The logic in terms of who is in charge of each of these departments is actually sat directly in Power Automate for now, just to keep it a bit quicker to explain. But that could be, inside of Business Central, could be in a different data source. It doesn't really make too many odds. We just need somewhere to know what's going on. Let's send the approval itself. Okay, cool. Let's just see if we've got one going. All right, so we've got one running. Perfect. So this is where hopefully opening every user's browser window is going to help me. And just give them all a refresh so you can see some approvals coming on in. So the tenant I'm using doesn't have doesn't have Exchange. And so I'm just using the Power Automate approvals notification area. When one loads up, I'll explain a little bit more about that option. Because this is the thing I really like about using Power Automate for approvals. You get a lot of different notification options, whereas in Business Central, it's email or there's a notification type in there, but you probably also noticed that we'll get to notifications if you use that option. But it's a bit weird, they've kind of taken that away, but they kept it in as an option. A little bit strange, but that people definitely want you to move forwards to this. I think it's the future option, right? So here we go. Here is a different user. Let's just check it out. So this is Adele Vance. So Adele Vance has ended up getting a approval notification for that sales quote we were just looking at. And then we've also got this one on the go as well. So this is Deborah Berger. So Deborah Berger has also got an approval notification for this same one. And then last but not least, we then have Grady Archie also getting the same thing. Right now, that probably doesn't seem all that overly unique to anybody, so that's fine. I understand that. So with this one, we're being told, okay, it's for the sales department that you've been given a notification for. And with this one, also marked the sales department. That might be me doing something wrong in my, I think I've done too much copying and pasting in the approvals part. I'll try to adjust that later. And then the production department also being notified here. So fine, we're getting some good stuff. Let's get that approved though. And just get the other ones and we'll have a look at how this actually ends up coming together and hanging together. I do like the copy command that's in Power Automate, but you can see there with the you're not changing the messaging. That's where it doesn't always work out so well. Okay, so that's now been flown through. So when we come back over to Business Central, we get it marked as released, so people can move on. So still not showing anything too different, but when we kind of get into the flow itself, we can start to see what ended up happening and I suppose how, yeah. I won't go into every command that's inside of this, but we'll just highlight some of the ones that are kind of needed for us to get going. So one of them is to actually know how many unique dimension values we've had sent over to us. So in our case, we had 3 different individual dimension values. But think about it like this with that slide that I showed at first. I had the 2 in the middle were both for the head of sales department. if that was the case, you only want one approval, but for both of the lines. Does it make sense to have two approvals to the same person in this instance? Might do in some circumstances, but for our scenario, it didn't. So I wanted just unique ones to be worked with. Once I know how many unique ones I've got, then I only need to work with those, right? So I'll then count how many approvals I've done for each of those unique steps. And then pretty much the thing that's driving this one is just a switch statement. So for each different dimension value that I pass in, I just go ahead and switch it up and say, okay, this is the value now, so go and send it to this person instead. So here's the production value. And then the next one was the admin value. So I've had all of those in. And then when we go through those, they'll just kick off an approval to the relevant person in this instance. Okay, fine, I passed the wrong message inside of this one because I said it was for sales, but quite clearly that's for that admin department. As you can see there, just need to change the fact that it says sales instead. That's just static text. When we kind of come to the end of that, if we have passed the same amount of approval values as we had unique dimensions, so we had 3. If I get 3 approvals, then I can approve. If I get 1 rejection, then it's reject. If I get 2 rejections, it's obviously going to be, it'll be reject. If I get 3, it'll definitely be reject. It has to match. That unique part is really key to making sure, okay, how many do I get through? Does that match how many approvals I got? If it did, then you can pass go. You can collect £200. So as I said, I did more of a deep dive session probably needed with this, so you can see all the extra parts. That is line level approvals. Kind of comes to the point where I need to say thank you very much for attending and listening. I hope it was useful. I've enjoyed it. Hopefully more content soon. Thank you very much.